Hello, Packer fans, and happy Thursday. Welcome into this all new episode of the Pack-A-Day Podcast. I am your host, Andy Herman. You can find me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. You can find the podcast at Pack-A-Day Podcast. You're the absolute best for being here. Hope you had an amazing Christmas for those of you who celebrated. And of course, for everyone else who's still going through the holiday season, I hope you enjoy that safe, happy holiday season as well. And we get to New Year's Eve, New Year's Day next week. It's still going to be chaotic and fun and exciting. And we've, of course, got Packers football to cover, Packers Vikings this week, Packers Bears, and then a wild card matchup that should be beyond epic, regardless who they play against. A ton to look forward to coming up here in the near future. All right, today we're going to be talking about looking back, I guess, at the scouting reports for both Javon Bullard and Jordan Morgan, how the scouting reports got it right, how they got it wrong, where these two players are trending so far this season. Clearly, Jordan Morgan out for the year. Javon Bullard has been out right now, and he hopefully will be back sooner rather than later. But we'll look back at the scouting reports for both of those players and see how those have kind of either come to fruition or maybe not exactly added up the way that they were initially given back when we did all of our draft coverage back in April and in May. All right, before we get there, a couple things to discuss. Chiefs and Ravens both pick up huge wins on Christmas Day football. I know a little bit controversial. Is it an NBA day? Is it an NFL? I don't care. There was football on, there was basketball on. Quite frankly, I'm more upset with the fact that Christmas Eve had almost nothing on, like one crappy bowl game on, no hockey, no basketball, no real college basketball, no college football besides that one crappy bowl game. No, like there was nothing on. So that I was more upset with the fact that there was like almost nothing on on Christmas Eve. And like they try to cram everything into Christmas Day, at least NBA and NFL did. I don't think hockey had anything on Christmas Day. There's no soccer going on really. I don't know, whatever. I don't care. Put on whatever you want to put on. And then I think everyone gets to decide for themselves whether or not they want to watch NBA or NFL. I enjoyed watching a little bit of NFL. I love the NBA. I got to watch a little bit of it later in the day as well, but Chiefs and Ravens pick up big wins. To me, what we really saw is that this Texans team is completely broken. I mean, completely broken. And while the Steelers have had a really good season, I would also argue that they are not at the top of that tier as a legitimate contender, in my opinion. Really good defense. I think really great season by Mike Tomlin and company to get that team where they've been. Don't see them as a legitimate contender. I kind of talked right around midseason. I thought from the beginning of the season up until about midseason, I thought there were 8 teams that could win the Super Bowl. If you remember back beginning to middle of the season, the 8 that I had said: Chiefs, Ravens, Bills in the AFC, and Texans in the AFC. Those are my 4 AFC teams. My 4 NFC teams were Minnesota, Detroit, Green Bay, and I still kept putting San Francisco in there despite some of their struggles, just because you expected at some point that they were maybe going to turn it on. Spoiler alert, they never really turned it on. I have now gone from 8 teams to 7 teams. I think there's 7 teams who can legitimately win it. I have traded out 2 and I have added 1. The 7 teams that I think can win it: 3 teams in the AFC, Chiefs, Ravens, and Bills. I would be pretty stunned / shocked if it is not one of those 3 teams that comes out of the AFC as champions. And then the 4 teams in the NFC: Packers, Vikings, Lions still, and Eagles. I will now add the Eagles in. That's the only team I have added through this entire season. And I am now taking away 2 teams. I do not think Houston can win it. And I do not obviously think San Francisco can win it since they're eliminated from playoff contention. But I've been on pretty much the same 6 teams all year: Chiefs, Ravens, Bills, Lions, Vikings, Packers. I would still be very, very confident that one of those 6 will win it. But I do think Philly is in that conversation as well. But either way, I still limit it to 7 at this point. And Green Bay is one of those 7. I don't think there's any arguing that at this point. And regardless of what order you would like to put them in, I'll add one thing on top of this. You want to know who I think is the 7th most likely of those 7 teams? The Detroit Lions. It could be crazy. I could be legitimately crazy. I just think with all the injuries they have, I don't think they can quite put it together. But I still think they're in the conversation. No question about it. We'll see. I think what's huge for them is if they can get the 1 seed and get that bye. I think if they fall and Minnesota somehow takes the 1 and Detroit can't, and Detroit falls back to the 5, I think with all the injuries that they have playing all those games, I think maybe they can navigate 3 games. I'm not sure they can navigate 4, not with the injuries they have. So I would actually put them as 7th of those 7 teams. But we saw the Chiefs and the Ravens. They're playing great football right now. They're both going to be really in that conversation of 2 teams that should be there in the AFC Championship game. The Bills will have a lot to say with that as well. But to me, those 3 teams, top of the list in AFC, 4 teams in the NFC, one of those 7 will win the Super Bowl, in my opinion. Packers have moved to 1-point favorites over the Minnesota Vikings. Interesting line move. It was slightly in favor of Minnesota earlier in the week. I think it was 1.5 points for Minnesota. I think apparently people had said it moved to 1.5 points for Green Bay, but it is, at least as of recording this, down to 1 point for Green Bay. It's an interesting line because you're in Minnesota. Green Bay doesn't have a ton to play for. Minnesota arguably has more to play for, going for the division and potentially a bye. Like, they have everything to play for. Green Bay just seeding 5, 6, or 7. Important, but not quite as much. It's in Minnesota. Minnesota won last time around and got off to that 28-0 lead. Harrison Smith is on the injured list, as did not participate. We'll talk about that in just a moment. Not sure how much that moves the needle. That's an interesting line to me. Again, this is regardless of if it's, Minnesota by 2, Green Bay by 2, Minnesota by 3, Green Bay by 3, anything in between. These are 2 very evenly matched teams, and this game could go in any direction. If you told me Minnesota won by double digits, I'd say, yeah, that could happen. Minnesota won by, single score, field goal, 1 point, something like that. Yep, easily could happen. You said Green Bay won by single digits. Yep. If you said Green Bay won by double digits, I'd say, yeah, I think all of those outcomes are possible. I'd be pretty stunned if Minnesota won by like 3 scores, and if Green Bay won by like 3 scores, that would be surprising to me. But anything, I think, Minnesota by 9, Green Bay by 9, or anything in between is not shocking to me in this one. Should be really fun. Cannot wait for it. But Green Bay, interestingly enough, again, 1-point favorites in this game, at least as of recording this. Let's get to our first injury report of the week, presented by Habish and Rotier. From a Vikings standpoint, Harrison Smith and Fabian Moreau, corner, Fabian Moreau, safety, Harrison Smith, did not practice. I should clarify here, neither team actually practiced on Christmas. These are simulated or estimated injury reports. If they did not, or if they would have practiced, Minnesota would have listed Harrison Smith and Fabian Moreau as did not participate. Limited was Jalen Redmond, the defensive tackle, and full participants would have been Blake Cashman, CJ Ham, Patrick Jones II, Josh Oliver, and Ivan Pace. That is the Minnesota injury report. The Packers injury report, again, had they practiced, it would have been Tyron Hopper, Quay Walker, Christian Watson, and Evan Williams as not practicing. Javon Bullard, Tucker Kraft, and Luke Musgrave would have been limited, and Jair Alexander and Corey Ballantyne would have been full participants here. The big couple noteworthy things: Javon Bullard, limited, which means that he would return to practice in some capacity, and I would expect that to be the case later this week. And Tyron Hopper not practicing. Quay Walker, Christian Watson, Evan Williams, not a surprise there, but the fact that Tyron Hopper, who injured himself early in the game, then went back on teams and then finished the game at linebacker, him not practicing in any capacity would have been a bit of a surprise, but will be worth monitoring through the course of the remainder of this week. How I would sort of put this right now, to me, Christian Watson, Quay Walker, and Evan Williams, I would be pretty surprised if not, well, we know Evan Williams is not going to play. I would be pretty surprised / shocked if Christian Watson or Quay Walker played in this one. Again, why race them back? The truly questionable ones to me would be Tyron Hopper, Jair Alexander, and Javon Bullard. And I would lean towards Bullard and Hopper. I shouldn't say Hopper. I would lean towards Bullard not playing, even though he's limited. I think it's less likely that he plays. Again, why rush him back? Alexander and Hopper, to me, those are the toss-up ones. Alexander continues to practice in full, and Hopper was able to finish the game last week. Those, to me, will be more questionable. And Musgrave, Kraft, and Ballantyne, I would expect to play. Again, not a doctor. We'll have to kind of wait and see, but that's just my estimate and guesstimation as of recording this on early Thursday morning. Just like the Packers defense protects the end zone, Habish Rotier is here to protect your rights. Whether you're dealing with an accident or injury, they've got your back with a national reputation and a hometown service. We've talked about it. When you call Habish, you are going to talk to a lawyer directly. Their number is 800-242-2874 or 800-2HABISH. You can always visit their website at habish.com. Habish Rotier, national reputation, hometown service. And now for our main topic, let's talk about Javon Bullard and Jordan Morgan. The scouting reports for both of them coming out of college, coming out right around, again, draft time, pre-draft. And for me, my scouting reports, as soon as I did the deep dive for both of those players, as soon as they were drafted in Green Bay, We'll get to my scouting reports with those deep dives. We'll also get to Dane Brugler's and the draft guide, and we'll get to Lance Zierlein's for Javon Bullard and Daniel Jeremiah's for Jordan Morgan. And we'll go through all of those and see what was right, what was wrong, and where these two players trend moving forward based on what we've seen out of both of them in 2024. Now, I should note, both of these players, both Javon Bullard and Jordan Morgan, were on my most likely Packers, my 25 most likely draft picks for the Packers going into the draft. Morgan and Bullard were both on that list. Edgerrin Cooper was on that list. Kitano Ladapo was on that list. And Donovan Jennings, the undrafted free agent that they signed, was also on that list. So of my 25 most likely Packers, 5 of them ended up being Packers as I was going back and looking at that. But Morgan and Bullard, both going into the draft, were both players that a lot of people were keen in on and were not surprised. And same thing with Edgerrin Cooper. We're not surprises when Green Bay drafted either of those guys. Let's talk about Jordan Morgan first. Again, this will be my scouting report on Morgan once I did the deep dive after they had selected him. Strengths, movement skills, incredibly light on his feet, impressive change of direction ability, screens, pin pulls, second level blocks, quick out of his stance. He is a Packer person, left tackle ability, asked to be the guy on the left side with very little help, fits perfectly in a zone blocking scheme, a better run blocker than he gets credit for, will wipe people out as a backside blocker, fantastic developmental traits, third largest hands of the top 15 offensive tackles in the draft, will display strong hands at the point of attack, natural knee bender and rarely ever bends at the waist, came back quickly from a torn ACL and battled through adversity, better every single season that he played, and showed the idea, he didn't show it in college because he played left tackle the entire time, but the idea was that he was going to be tremendously versatile. Hadn't done it, but he projected as a versatile offensive lineman that could potentially play 4 spots along the offensive line. We've seen him at left guard and right guard in the NFL already. We've seen him practice at left tackle and right tackle. He was a left tackle in college, so that versatility does seem to still be there for Jordan Morgan. His weaknesses, his tape was all over the place. Technically, he was in need of a lot of work. He oversets and opened up his hips far too early. Inconsistent kick slide that doesn't get him enough depth. Hands were all over the place, can be catastrophic with short arms, and will duck his head from time to time. Want to see him control the battle a bit more often. Want to see a little bit more violence in his punch. He has good low center of gravity, but inconsistent with his balance. It can look great, but it didn't always look great. Wanted to see him destroy teams like Northern Arizona. And unfortunately, when you go back and watch that Northern Arizona tape, you see actually them beating Jordan Morgan at times. I wanted to see him finish more blocks. He was usually where he was supposed to be, and the technique was a little bit hit and miss, but I wanted to see him go out and finish some people. Didn't see enough of that. Wanted to see him more calm, balanced, and zen-like in pass pro. He was a little bit all over the place. The game had not slowed down for him yet. Needed to improve his anchor to better stave off bull rushers. Will struggle against bigger defensive linemen and more length, and speed rushers out wide gave him a hard time as well. The other note that I had here was that the game had not slowed down for him yet, which is a good thing and a bad thing. It was a bad thing because it's great when the game slows down for you. It's a good thing because he was already super talented and pretty impressive, and the game hadn't even remotely slowed down for him yet. So the idea is once the game does slow down for him, he should be even better than what he was or maybe even projected to be at the NFL level. What he could bring to Green Bay in 2024, immediate competition for Rasheed Walker. That's what this is, again, going into the season. I thought that did not end up being the case. If things go well, I thought he could be a starting left tackle with very high upside. If things went okay, I thought he would be competition for Sean Ryan at right guard, which did end up being the case prior to Morgan's injuries. If things didn't go great, I thought he would be the first guy off the bench, which he kind of ended up being after the injuries. Then what I said is that Green Bay needed him in 2024 to provide starting caliber offensive line play. I think he did that, maybe just a hair underneath that or a smidge underneath it. But I think for the most part, he did that. You would have loved for him to stay healthy and maybe even be more competitive with Sean Ryan and some of those guys. But Sean Ryan's also just had a really nice season. So that even that, I'm not sure that opportunity would have presented itself as much. But when asked to, he did not look out of place as a starting offensive lineman. I said physically, he has all the tools, just needs to begin to master his craft, which is still the point and still the emphasis today as we start getting, to look ahead to 2025. He's going to have to continue to master his skills because the talent is still abundantly there. My final thoughts on Morgan, everything would be fixable from a technique standpoint outside of his arm length. Needs to start with better hand placement. If left tackle doesn't work out, lots of potential as guard, which we've seen. got to get better, or he did get better year over year. Really impressive coming back from the torn ACL. Love that he's a Packers type of guy, locker room type of guy. Overall tape leaves you or left you wanting more, wanted to see him dominate, and he never really dominated. But I thought he was going to be going to a really, really good spot in Green Bay, and fit matters. And I think we saw that. I think him not having to come in and play a ton right away would have benefited him. It just was unfortunate he wasn't able to stay healthy to get all those benefits that would have been available to him, as he would have rotated in and gained that valuable experience. I did have some concerns, but I could see the vision. Pick 41, I thought would have been a better area for Morgan, but he wasn't also going to be there at that point. 25 felt a bit steep, but you're always going to pay a premium for an offensive lineman that has left tackle ability and overall versatility. Can't wait to see him at rookie minicamp was my note at the time. I did enjoy seeing him at rookie minicamp and minicamp and OTAs. I think there is still that upside there. Is all the potential in the world to be a starter from day one and succeed. I thought it was a good, understandable fruits and vegetables pick by the Packers. If he hits his upside again, he can be a decade-long left tackle. If he hits somewhere in the middle, he's going to be a good to average tackle or guard. And even if you miss on him, even worst case scenario, he doesn't live up to it. I thought he was a 5 to 8 year rotational depth piece along the offensive line. Here's what Daniel Jeremiah had to say about Jordan Morgan. He finished his rankings with Jordan Morgan as his 49th rated overall prospect. Quote, Morgan is a very athletic left tackle with average size. In pass pro, he is quick out of his stance to meet and cover up speed rushers. He can sink his weight and drop levels when bull rushed. He also does a nice job reworking his hands when he gets knocked back to regain leverage. He struggles to redirect inside when facing counter moves, getting beat on that inside shoulder too often. He also will occasionally duck his head, which is correctable. In the run game, he is more finesse than power. He can use his quickness to cut off the backside, and he takes excellent angles to the second level to wall off linebackers. He doesn't have a lot of knockback power to displace defenders over his nose. Morgan is just over a year removed from ACL injury, and I'm hopeful he can add more strength and power now that he's healthy. Overall, he has starting tackle ability. Now, let's get to Dane Brugler's notes from the draft guide. This was Dane's strengths and weaknesses for Jordan Morgan. Strengths, natural knee bender and stays balanced in his pass sets. NFL quality feet, body control and size and length. Fast eyes to comfortably pass off and pick up rushers. Initiates contact in the run game with an aggressive mentality. Explosive takeoff and range when pulling or on outside zone. Has the strength in his hands to turn and seal edge defenders. Able to re-leverage his body as a drive blocker and when combating bull rushers. Trusted by the coaching staff and doesn't receive much help on the left side. Well regarded as a leader in the program and was named a 2023 captain. After struggling to maintain his weight in the past, he added 60 pounds since enrolling at Arizona and stayed healthy as a senior. Weaknesses, average lateral range and doesn't always get proper depth as a pass blocker. Caught drifting outside, which creates soft inside shoulders. 2 holding penalties in 2023. Hands are adequately timed, but not always forceful to knock away long arms or power-based moves. Needs to do a better job breaking contact to aid his anchor. Can be jostled in the run game by side angle blocks. Battled several ankle injuries, including a high left ankle sprain during preseason camp, which caused him to miss the season opener and play through pain most of the year. Season-ending torn right ACL in November 2022. Required surgery and led him back to Arizona for a 5th season. Left tackle only in college and doesn't have in-game guard experience. 100% of his college snaps came out at offensive tackle. Overall, Morgan struggles to anchor mid-slide versus power, but he is a balanced mover who is well-schooled and physical in all phases. Though he can survive at tackle in the NFL, his skill set projects much better inside at guard, similar to Matthew Bergeron. Had a 1st to 2nd round grade, 29th overall on Jordan Morgan. So that is our set of notes on Jordan Morgan. Let's go to Javon Bullard. We'll start with my takeaways as I did the deep dive immediately following the draft on Javon Bullard. My positives on Bullard: fearless attacking safety, plays extremely fast downhill, and the 4.440 shows up on tape. Ability to trigger both in the run game, in coverage, and as a blitzer, and he can transition at the top of the route. One-on-one with Ricky Pearsall, he showed the ability to cover Ricky Pearsall in space, which again showed that he has that pure coverage ability and maybe would project as being somebody who could play in the slot a little bit. Understands route combinations and shows that he probably does some tape study. Has versatility, again, safety, nickel, and can do a variety of different things. Has a natural feel for the game. Plays the game the right way with an aggressive demeanor and attacking mentality. Attacks wide receiver screens. Will stack bigger players, takes smart angles to the football, displays the ability to get sideline to sideline and high point the ball as a post safety, very good blitzer, more than capable of big hits and making his presence known despite his smaller stature. Knows when to floor it and when to stay more patient. 282 career special team snaps, consistent in his run fits and fills his lane with vigor. Considered a team leader and a great locker room presence despite not being a team captain. Negatives were his long speed going forward versus going backwards. I thought he was much better going forwards versus turning around and running. I thought that was where his speed lacked a little bit. Coming forward, attacking, it was easy. When he had to flip his hips and turn to run, that's where that long speed issue sort of showed up. Recovery speed, same thing, was a bit of an issue. There was a little bit of tightness in those hips, and he would struggle, in my opinion, with faster receivers. We haven't really seen that show up in the NFL so far. Feet will get stuck in coverage, which we have seen show up in the NFL. Undersized with shorter arms. Versatility will vary. I think he can only play the slot in certain matchups. Shiftier and faster wide receivers could give him troubles, but I thought he could play against bigger tight ends. Here's the thing. I still agree with that. Now, Green Bay has barely played any man-to-man coverage, especially with Bullard in the slot. And when teams have picked on him a little bit. So I do still think that that's the case where he can play certain matchups or a ton of zone in the slot. But if you get man-to-man, there's only a select few matchups that I think you feel comfortable with. Some tight ends and maybe some slower wide receivers you feel a little bit more comfortable with in those situations. Does get away with grabbing players in coverage. And can he be great at any one position was my question. Meaning, yes, he can play box safety, post safety, in the slot a little bit. You can do all these different things, but can he be great at any one of them? That was, again, one of the big questions I had following the draft. What I thought he could bring to the Packers in 2024, an immediate starting safety next to Xavier McKinney, attacking play mentality that plays much bigger than his size. That has absolutely been the case. Can use him as a big slot in certain situations. Don't think you want him as your primary slot corner, especially in man coverage against certain players. Another core locker room piece, a consistent player, doing everything he's supposed to out on the field, filling gaps, taking good angles, supporting his teammates, and a really good combo player with Xavier McKinney. My final thoughts on him, really great pick by Goody late in round 2, day 1 starter. Think he's more of a safety than a slot. Can be a piece that gets attacked in certain matchups if the Packers aren't careful. Think Jeff Hafley will be very creative with him, using him and finding ways to put him in great positions to succeed. McKinney, Bullard, and Cooper have me excited about defensive football again in Green Bay. That has very much come to fruition. All right, let's go to Lance Zierlein and his strengths and weaknesses on Javon Bullard. Strengths, and by the way, he had a 2nd or 3rd round grade on Javon Bullard. Strengths, plays with above average football intelligence and instincts, patient in reading and reacting to wide receivers' actions. Spatial awareness helps navigate rub routes and pursuit angles. Has the route anticipation to shadow breaks from off man. Attacks blockers with stiff punch to separate as run supporter. Centers up and accelerates through the targets as a tackler. His weaknesses: could struggle covering large patches of grass as a high safety. That hasn't really been an issue, although he hasn't been asked to play high safety much at all. Short strider lacking comeback speed once he's beaten. Very average burst to close creates limited playmaking range. Don't know. I totally agree with that. Needs to come to balance a little sooner as an alley runner. Tightness in hips creates inconsistency as an open field tackler. We have seen that come to fruition a little bit. All right, here's what Dane Brugler had to say. All right, strengths: sturdy, well-developed upper body, terrific short area quickness with strong closing speed and split field range. Head coach Kirby Smart describes his hitting ability like a little stick of dynamite. Strokes ball carriers across the middle. Hard guy to keep blocked because of the way he can punch off contact. Plays with the physicality and pursuit leverage of a box run defender. Quickly able to course correct and takes piercing angles to the football. Sharp zone eyes and has the peripheral vision to pick up crossers and sort through the route combinations. His high school and college coaches agree that he has a future in coaching because of his mental toughness. Confident competitor and regarded as one of the team leaders and best personalities in the Georgia locker room. Experienced at multiple positions in the secondary and on kick and punt coverages. His weaknesses: lacking high-end athletic traits, undersized frame by NFL standards with short arms, aggressive play style, but will get overzealous at times. See a late hit versus Alabama in 2023. Feels like he needs to get handsy at the top of routes to slow receivers. Choppy pedal and might not have the balance to cover NFL slot receivers. Hard to find any blitzing reps on his 2023 tape. Have to go back to 2022. Charged with driving under the influence in September of 2022. Suspended for 1 game and faced additional charges, including holding a phone while driving, not using headlights, and possession of alcohol by a person under the age of 21. Missed 2 games as a junior because of a sprained left ankle. Overall, Bullard doesn't have ideal size or length, but he is ultra instinctive and makes his presence felt at all 3 levels of the field. His skill set fits best as a hybrid nickel defender who can handle box duties, disguise his intentions, and drop into space. Gave him a 2nd or 3rd round grade, his 53rd overall graded player. Overall, if we want to look at what Javon Bullard and Jordan Morgan have done so far, Javon Bullard injured right now. As we mentioned, he would have been limited if the Packers practiced on Wednesday. Bullard has played 658 snaps, both at safety and in the slot. I have a plus 1.45 grade on him so far this season, so above average. PFF has a 53.7 grade on him. Remember, 60 is average, so a little bit below average. We're not super far off, but I've liked Bullard a little bit more than what PFF has. Jordan Morgan has only played 186 snaps this season, and again, he is out for the year. He's played at both right guard and at left guard. I have a slight negative on him, negative 0.65. PFF has a ever so slight negative on him, 59.2. Again, 60 is average, so just very slight negative. But overall, solid contributor when in there. Not somebody that you're freaking out because he's not playing well or living up to like expectations or anything like that. He's been what I would consider fine. Not a game changer, not a game breaker, not anything that is out of this world, but he's been fine when he's been in the game. It's just the unfortunate issue is he only got to play 186 snaps this season. As far as both of them go, I'm still excited about both. I think Jordan Morgan's going to be a good starter in this league. I think Javon Bullard has the ability to be a good, if not really good starter in this league. I think Bullard, they got to figure out exactly how to use him, I think, a little bit more and maybe get him settled into this defense a little bit more. But I love the way he plays. He plays the football, plays the game of football the right way. And I'm very bullish on what I think he can ultimately become in this league. He just adds a little bit of a different flavor of tackling and intensity in that secondary for Green Bay too. And he plays the game at 1,000,000 miles per hour in almost always a good way. It can get a little overzealous and maybe take a poor angle here or there, but you live with it because you love the way that he plays. I think he's going to be a really good player. So I still think these are going to be 2 good starters for Green Bay for the foreseeable future. You add in Edgerrin Cooper, Evan Williams, and you have the makings of a very good draft. Yes, you could insert player X here for Jordan Morgan and maybe be a little bit better, especially due to the injuries. Let's give this dude a hot second to see what he can become in year 2. Likely going to be a starter in year 2. And I'm looking forward to that. I think he can be a very good player for Green Bay moving forward. All right, that's going to do it for me today. I hope you enjoyed these breakdowns of both Javon Bullard and Jordan Morgan, looking back at the scouting reports coming out of college and how they've sort of, some things been right, some things been wrong. I think a lot of it spot on kind of for both of them. If you kind of look at Jordan Morgan, some of the things that we talked about, making the transition to guard, working on his technique, working on his sort of balance and his ability to anchor, and just being more of a finisher. Those are all still things that he's looking at, looking to improve upon. And yes, he has moved inside to guard, not super shocking. And for Javon Bullard, some safety, corner versatility. Can he match up with certain wide receivers as a man-to-man slot corner? There's still questions in regards to that. Where is his final destination from a position standpoint? And while he's good, can he get to great? I think a lot of things that we hit on in our scouting notes have definitely come to fruition for both of these players. All right, that's going to do it for me today. Thank you so much for joining. Always appreciate you a ton. Shout out to our All-Pro and Hall of Fame members, Most Hated Minnesotan, PJ Wynn, John Wild, Brandon Paletta, Jennifer Wright, Boom Handle, Donald Lee, Lori Lord, Baby QB, David McCluskey, Donald Decker, Alex Hwang, Arnaldo Espinosa, Peter Rataka, Jay Zimmerman, B. Brown, Puerto Rican Packer, Dan Guessford, Step Keat, Love and Football, Dylan Pat Scott, Bobby Santoro, SoCal Pack, and Allison Tuckwab. I will see you all tomorrow, but until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.